Hello, and welcome to another season of the Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are diving into Crowded Volume 1.
Yeah, Volume 1, crowded by writer Christopher Sabella, our team of Rosenstein, Ted Brandt, issues 1-6. So the first half of the print issues that are available, but only 1/3 of the comic altogether. If that's confusing to you, scroll back on your podcast feed one week and listen to the Zero episode where we gave a little intro and explanation as to why that is. But Volume 1 of Crowded, issues 1-6.
And this one is called Soft Apocalypse. I've noticed that each chapter has a title, each trade has a title.
Yes.
And I like the consistency there because I think in our last series, each chapter had a title. In Time Before Time, each chapter has a title, but each trade does not. They're just Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It depends on the tone of the book. Obviously, a book like this, if you look at the chapter titles or issue titles, as it were, here, and the trade collection titles, they're all tongue in cheek. They're meant to be glib and all that, which is it fits the theme of the comic and the vibe of the book.
100%, yeah. So I'm kind of torn about where I want to. Let me tell you, it took. I said last week that, I thought maybe the art was like a little too poppy or the, colors were too whatever. It took about 3 pages before I was like totally sold on this book. And I do love the art, by the way. It was just not the excessively cartoony-ish nature of it, I think, was initially. I was like, I don't know if I'm really the target demo for this book. And then it turns out I was, and it's the perfect tone for this book.
Oh yeah, I think it's fantastic. And the line art, I think specifically the character design, I think it's where this book really, really shines in terms of all the various people that Charlie and Vita encounter, because we're talking about they're being hunted by would-be assassins, which in this case is potentially anyone in the LA area or even beyond, so they're it's not like it's they're drawn like, oh, here are like the ninjas who are after, here's like the mafia, like these are just regular random people, from like, your social media influencers to your hired assassins to your just absolutely random people. And the variety of character looks and designs and feel and all that is fantastic. And the colors, I think, to me, this is what really jumps out with the artwork. The colors by Fiona Farrell, which they are, I want to say that they're not like neon, but they're very bright and bold, and they're very distinctive to the point that, immediately within, as soon as the book starts, we're talking like 3 pages, 4 pages, pink is Charlie, yellow is Vita. And like, you're set right there. Like, you have just met these characters. Quite literally nothing about them except the story that Charlie is retelling here. And you already have an association with them, that they're drawn and they're colored. They're presented in a way that is just automatically distinctive, and that there's no other way to read and kind of interpret, the I don't want to say the symbolism there, but just there's no that connection is immediate,
right.
You've just met these characters and you already associate them.
Yes. And from the caption bubbles pretty early on, like who your POV is. Although I do think there's some debate about who the main character of this book is. It's obviously a buddy cop. So it's like, who's the main character of Lethal Weapon? And they're co-stars. However, I do think in Lethal Weapon, you're really from the POV of Danny Glover's character, observing the craziness.
And what I will say is this book is definitely a two-hander. And any kind of buddy cop two-hander movie, whether it's Lethal Weapon or hell, something like it's not even a cop movie, but like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Steve Martin and John Candy. Another perfect two-hander. Anytime you have a situation like that, I think the tendency is to whether this is true or not, the tendency is to view the quote unquote main character as whoever the straight man is,
Yeah.
not the chaos agent, because we're viewing the world through the regular person, and it's their reaction to the chaos agent that's in their life, you know? So in this case, Vita, while she is a bodyguard and has private contract history, whatever it is, she's the regular one, and Charlie is the wild card. So we are viewing Charlie's machinations and what her life is like through the eyes of Vita, even though Vita doesn't live like an objectively normal life, you know?
Right.
Her life is, but because she's the one that seems stable, you know, so it seems like she is the protagonist. And I think
Certainly by the end of the volume, there's a lot of, in Vita's head, Charlie's asleep, and it's like, okay, you know, we're clearly, this is the straight man now.
Yes. Yeah.
And as eccentric as she is,
but it is absolutely a two-hander. And like you said, I agree. Like Lethal Weapon, you're conditioned to think, oh, you're following Danny Glover's character, but that story only works with the two of them, you know. But because you're probably going to find someone like Glover's character and not like Mel Gibson's character in your, because Gibson's character is so ridiculous, you know, he's so off the, you know, that's just how it is, that
as is the actor.
Yes, but you view yourself into like, that guy is the character, you know, he's the regular dude. But again, because it's a two-hander, it is absolutely co-leads. And so I wouldn't blame anyone who would read this book and be like, oh, well, clearly Vita is the POV. She's the main character. Because I understand where that's coming from, but I personally, I would disagree with that, because I think,
again,
this
certainly
kind of
by
story
the
setup,
end of the book, or by the end of volume 1, it's like, oh yeah, Vita is our most objective lens on the world.
Yes.
You know, Charlie is, you're just like living in the spin zone with Charlie.
And I think also, especially when we go through this volume here, like, little things like when Charlie runs off and has that night out with the bachelorette party and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember here. Like she runs off and does her own thing, and it's up to, you know, Vita to go follow her. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to scroll through where it is here. I want to say we don't see, if I'm not questioning, don't we see all of her time like in flashback, like as to what she did?
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those like slow burn reveals. Like they keep pulling another corner away from the history, right?
Yeah.
But like, anyway, I didn't want to fixate on that, but I wanted to make sure we were like on the same page of like, yes, this is a story about this assassin or this defender,
bodyguard. Yeah.
Bodyguard. Yeah. Because, you know, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but if the story were to continue, you know, into a sequel or something like that, it seems pretty obvious you'd be following Vita, not Charlie. Because once Charlie's 27 days are up, her story's over, unless they become like partners. You know, it's like, Charlie's going to get a defend account now, and she's going to be the friendly face of the 1.7 star who's never, or 1.4 star who's never, you never lost someone, but no one wants to work with her.
No one likes her because she's mean. Yeah. And you're right. That is true in terms of the Charlie's specific arc. You're right, is tied to the Reaper campaign. Live or die at the end. This version of the character only exists until the end of that campaign. You know, you are right about that. So, regardless of where it goes, if the story were to continue or whatnot, she would be in a different role because she's no longer the target. Again, you know, because as long as the campaign is going on, their relationship's in the same spot. And if it were to continue and hypothetical down the line or something like that, you know, as soon as the campaign is over, her relationship to Vita and the rest of the world literally all changes. So yeah, this is, which is why you view Vita as like, again, the quote unquote stable one, you know?
Right. Which is like, yeah, it's stable
it's all
relative to
relative. It's
Charlie,
all
right?
relative.
Because then
Yes.
you see her ex-partner,
Yeah.
both cop and life,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, there's the stable, well-adjusted person.
There's someone with an actual real job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed this setup quite a bit. The commentary on gig economy is like the is the clear entry point, and
Oh yeah.
that was the obvious hook for me. So I think that Welcome to the World of Work, or Welcome to the Work Week. That's the name of the first issue.
Yes.
And in that page 2, page 3, she's meeting Vita, and she's like, "Tell me what you did today." And here are the apps they came up with, which like all of these are so painfully real, and they're all spelled in the most obnoxious app way possible.
Yeah. Actually, spell it normally and then drop out a random vowel or two.
Yeah, so pod hopping, which is just staying in someone's vacation house. It's your Airbnb, VRBO. Mover and Drift are obviously Uber and Lyft. Wheelsy, which I do think exists now, where you rent your car out for the rest of the day as like a rental car. I'm pretty sure there's some service where you can do that. And then there's Closet, where you rent your clothes out, which is Rent a Swag from Parks and Rec. There's Dog Stroll, which is Rover is the app for that, where you can go dog walking. City Sitter, I am not familiar with that. I have a kid. We're interested in babysitters, but I'm definitely not interested in booking a one-time 3-hour babysitter off of an app.
I was going to say I don't think that's an app like that, but there are apps and websites where like accredited sitters can be found and all that stuff. Not like rando like this, but then I think those things do exist. But yes, you're right.
Yeah, and then Money Friender, which I'm trying to remember what that one even was. It's probably just like short-term loans, with like same-day interest or something like that.
I think it looks like person-to-person loans with interest. Yeah.
Yeah. Then she's tutoring online, but I don't think they mentioned an app for that. But obviously that's a very real thing. They forgot to include her online counseling session here, but they included Pal Rent, which like this was, I think, the stroke of genius of like, this felt like the Mark Russell twist of like, ha 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 ha, ha ooh.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, that is the Mark Russell experience right there, where laugh, laugh, laugh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's also like in fiction, it's Percival Everett. I don't know if you have read any of his books. But his book Erasure was adapted to the movie American Fiction last year, and all of his books are like ha 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 ooh, and they always end on the ooh, like that. Yeah. It's just like, oh, this is a comedy, but you're not going to walk away feeling warm and fuzzy because the last thing I'm going to stick you with really hurts.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he has to do that to me, but I keep reading it and re-enlisting. And honestly, I just read a book from his wife, and pretty similar beats. It was like, ha ha ha, ouch.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we get to the two main apps of the series, which are Defend and Reaper. And they keep sprinkling in these little apps as they go. Yeah. But this was clearly one super fun day in the writing room of just thinking of all these ridiculous apps. But Pal Rent, by the way, I don't think I even mentioned it because I just talked about how sad it is. But it's an old guy who lost his wife and just wants someone to sit next to him on a bench in the park feeding pigeons. And he's willing to pay her by the hour for that. And it's so sad. It's like so demoralizing. Like, yeah. I mean, I live across the street from a retirement home, and I could not.
You could make some bank, man. So I'm telling you.
I know. I was like, I could not help but think of like, I don't know if they're quite to the point where they would pay money for this, but there are so many people in retirement homes that have lost a spouse, lost friends, whatever, who would love to have someone just sit with them for an hour a day. Mm-hmm. And capitalism and tech world exploiting that and turning it into an app for profit is just like, it's so sad. That would be like if there was an app for, persons without homes to like get meals. And it's like, oh yeah, you get paid by the hour for showing up to serve at a homeless kitchen or something like. It's come on. It's like this is like basic humanity that they've turned into gig economy.
Well, yeah, and I think that is kind of the
And that's the
point
whole
of
point. Yeah.
yeah, the removal of the I want to say the removal of the person. Everything becomes impersonal. Everything becomes transaction, right? That
Right.
in this world, they're showing that literally everything you do and can do and have done is transactional, and it's capitalism run wild. And I agree. This must have been a fun way to like throwing out ideas. This is one of those things that like, hey, did Chris Sabella have all these listed out already? Was it something that the group them were talking about, like just lobbing ideas back and forth? I wonder about something like that. But the thing that I really love about these opening couple of pages is the whole thing starts out with the little caption box from Charlie that says it was like any other day. So
Right.
like any other day, she's just doing 7, 8, 9, 10 different gig jobs to get by from as soon as she wakes up to when she's done for the day. Like this is her entire day cycling through all these apps, all these different gigs, all these different job shares, and seems completely like non-fussed by this. Like how often in some of these, in every single one of these panels, basically, the way she's drawn is disinterested. She's staring at her phone,
Oh yeah.
like,
Well, she's working on the next gig, right?
yeah,
It's like you don't have time to be in the moment. You've got to line up the next thing.
She loans her car out. She's staring at her phone. She's loaning out her clothes. She's staring at her phone. The kids are screaming, staring at the phone. You can just tell that it's all about. It's not about being in the moment. What's happening here? This is already done. What am I doing next? What's the next job? What's the next gig? What's the next thing I got to do?
Right. And I think it's really easy to judge her for that, but it's also like, well, if you're in a world where none of these things makes you enough money to get by, you have to be just moving from one thing to the next in serial fashion.
Well,
and that's kind of the oppressive way of
yes,
gig culture.
I think so. But I think
it's also a comment on the character.
Yeah, the audience, because this is not a world that we live in yet. I guess there are people who could potentially live this way if there are enough apps out there. But I do think as the readership, we're meant to, it's presented in this way for us to look at it and be like, geez, that's crazy. Like we're supposed to feel that way.
We're invited to judge the character.
So as of this point yet, we're not, based on these opening pages, I don't think we're meant to judge her in a like nothing we see here is like, well, definitely someone's going to put out $1 million hit on you.
Right.
So, but I do think we're meant to judge the lifestyle, be like, wow, that's crazy. Like who would do that? And so maybe we're meant to start questioning the kinds of choices she makes.
Exactly. Yeah. And it does seem like in the early pages here, the impression we're given is, oh, she enjoys this lifestyle. She enjoys, the busyness of it, the hustle. There's an author, Scott Galloway, who you may have heard of. He has a book called The Algebra of Wealth and anything, but he refers to like his first job on Wall Street, and he's like, it's what's the term he uses? He calls it hustle porn, where like, everyone is just constantly bragging and one-upping about like, oh, I was here till this time last night and I did this and this, and he was like, yeah, and I was in my early 20s and I like got in on that game, and then very quickly was like, wait, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want this to define my lifestyle. I want to actually live a life, and that was just not part of it. And so it's not just these like tech things, gig economy. I think that's also something much deeper in American culture. And it comes down to like, places that have unlimited PTO. Statistically, those employees get the fewest paid days off of the year because nobody wants to be seen as a slacker. Everyone tries to guess how much everyone else is going to take off and take a little bit less than that. And I'm what you call an outlier. Like, if I had that, I'd be like, oh yeah, well, there's a con that weekend. So
I'm going to do my work and be out of here. But no, you're right. There's so much, a lot of it in the way it is in our world, a lot of it is performative. it's the rise and grind mindset.
Well, especially yeah, like baby boomers I've worked with that are like, oh, I work a 60-hour week, and it's like, I need like a meme or like the voice from Arrested Development to say the 60-hour week, and it's like them spending 3 hours trying to figure out how to change their signature on Outlook, and them standing around the water cooler talking about a sports game for 2 hours, and it's like, well, you were at work 65 hours, but you maybe did 20 minutes of actual work today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's but again, however, I don't think though in Charlie's case, when she's recounting that day to Vita, I don't think she is doing it in a way of being like, look how busy I was. She's just like, this is what I do,
Oh yeah, no, there was no humble brag or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just this is what I do. And of course, she's in some level of denial about why would anyone put a hit out on me, Why would someone open a Reaper campaign on me? And and as we move through the volume, obviously we see that like, okay, maybe she's not the greatest person in the world. Does that mean she deserves to be killed for $1 million+? It's a different question altogether. But we do see that, she just isn't the greatest person to be around. For whatever reasons. And so you start seeing some of that there. And as it goes through, as you move through this first volume, these first 6 issues, you see the kind of person that Charlie is, who is effectively just like wildly self-centered and egotistical,
Yes.
And
I mean,
and in that way, though, that ties back to her normal day of running in all these apps. Everything she does is about the right now. It's what I'm doing right now. What am I doing next? There's no long-term planning or thinking.
well, and I think it's kind of a chicken egg situation, right? It's like,
Oh, probably.
it's like, well, this lifestyle caused her to be this way, but also now she's this way, so she could never escape this lifestyle. And there's like a cruel trap to it. But yeah, Charlie, I would say Charlie is a little annoyed or a little annoying early on, and I don't think I ever become endeared to her. Like, I don't think I ever really care about Charlie.
In this first volume, I think that's right. And I was thinking about this during my reread. If you're ever supposed to be at the end of this volume, if you're supposed to at any point feel sympathetic towards her, like really sympathetic, like again, and
Right.
not, and again, beyond the idea of does someone just being mean and selfish deserve to have a hit put out on them, like, because nothing we see from any of Charlie's interactions make her seem like an evil person or a bad person, right? She's just kind of selfish.
Yeah, I
Just-
mean, almost like an empty vessel. It's just like, but I think it also gets into the moral question of like, yeah, maybe she's selfish or self-centered or vapid.
Yeah.
Does she deserve to die?
Well, exactly. Yes. And but separating that out there, does she deserve to die? A different question. But do you feel sympathetic towards her as to why no one seems to like her, why she's alone? And you see how kind of self-destructive it is. And I guess on some level, you can feel some empathy for that. But I think at the end of this volume, and as I was rereading it, I think I was surprised because I hadn't reread this. I guess this is my first reread of this book since I read it initially when it first came out. I guess I was surprised as to, I guess for lack of a better word, how unlikable they let Charlie be throughout this first volume. Like at no point, they have some moments where it seems like that she has some self-reflection and some self-awareness, but through the vast majority of it, it's just like, nah, man. Like,
Well, because that's not what the book is really about, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
this is not about like, oh, this is a likable character, so you're rooting for them to win or stay alive or anything like that. This is literally about like, how messed up is it that society allows this to happen, and is this okay even if the person's a scumbag, even if they're not likable? And she's not like the most unlikable character. She just doesn't do anything to endear you.
Exactly. That's that was trying to the Neil was trying to thread is that she's not an evil person, you know. As far as what we're shown, yeah, she's just someone that you're just like, why would I willingly spend time around and with this person, you know?
Right.
Based on everything we've seen, she's not malicious, I don't believe, but she's also like not going out of her way to make anybody feel good. So yeah, but I will push back a little though. I do think some of what this book is about is there's the commentary on the world of the gig economy and job sharing and all of that and kind of the addiction to the phones and mobile devices and everything. But at this core, again, I do believe it is, as we talked about, this buddy comedy, and it's just about these two characters and watching where that relationship goes and how what that push pull is between the two of them, and just seeing how that grows and where that goes, what directions they go, how, and a lot of it is Charlie doing something incredibly stupid and Vita getting angry and frustrating and have to go after her and save. That's kind of the setup in this first volume here. But I do think that's also a core part of what you're watching. You're watching that relationship between these two characters. Again, that odd couple match, that buddy comedy thrown together, oil and water kind of thing, and just seeing where that goes, wrapped up in this larger world of, anybody's an assassin because they're trying to get this $1 million+ the fact that they're always under threat, they're always on the run, there's never a moment of peace. And so that kind of adrenaline field, just go action,
yeah. And let's talk about the kind of the elephant in the room of the book, which I think really gets its intrigue at the end of volume 1. The elephant in the room is like, okay, apps do a lot of crazy stuff, questionable legality. How in the world did this ever get through? Of like, well, if you kickstart enough money, then sure, you can kill someone. It's just a matter of the paperwork with the police. Yeah. And then you find out, oh, the government might be using this to like deal with people they want to deal with. And that's how they allowed it to go through. Still, that's the what do they call that? The suspension of disbelief or whatever. That's like you have to accept that one piece of the premise that, like,
of course, yes,
society a few minutes from now will be ready to accept this as a gig economy thing. Once you do that, everything else is like, okay, it's only a slight exaggeration given the premise. That I was kind of wrestling with that question through the whole first volume, and then when you get to the end and they're like, oh yeah, this is like a bot farm doing this campaign, and Vita immediately thinks like, oh, that's gotta be the government.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep, you got it. Now that's not to say it is the government.
Yeah.
But all of the characters find that to be the most plausible explanation.
Yes, yeah.
Which tells you something about the government.
That's what I was going to say. Everyone, as soon as someone says that, no one's like, that's ridiculous. The immediate reaction is, yeah, probably. Everyone buys in on that. You are right, though, that because Reaper really is like the most extreme possible example, every other ridiculous app just naturally falls short of that. So once you've accepted the idea of Reaper, that any other app they could come up with for any other service and any other reason seems reasonable because you've already bought into the fact that you can crowdfund an assassination.
And is it bad that I thought, I guess, is it bad that I thought Palrent was sadder than Reaper?
Oh, no. I
mean, Reaper is like tragic. It's like the Hunger Games part of the Hunger Games, right? It's just like an unthinkable move by society that, of course, we know from history, like anything that you think is unthinkable, society has already done. And there's a cyclical nature to most of it.
Palrent is a sadder commentary on society. Reaper is something like a more reasonable, don't say reasonable, is a more believable outcome,
Yep. That was literally the quiet part out loud.
I know. Because because Power Rant is because obviously the what you seen there, the example for Power Rant is a senior citizen, older person sitting
Yeah.
on a bench. But theoretically, anybody could do that. So this could be
Yeah, it could have been a
like
teenager or,
it could have been
somebody that's getting bullied.
exactly, and that sort of thing. And also then, so like, not that it's any less sad, but it's that idea of you're preying on someone, you're turning what should be human kindness into capitalism. That is sadder commentary on our world than, I mean, people get killed all the time for less reasons. And if you're telling that like you can make money off that, I mean, what was that there was a commentary when, one of the many times that Vita and Charlie are on the run, right? They pull up on a place and Vita's like, listen, be careful, stay with me, don't do anything, blah, 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 blah. And Charlie's like, how are we not safe here? It's a police station. And Vita's like, listen, who do you think cashes in on all of these Reaper campaigns?
Yeah, that was really bleak.
Who has guns and likes to kill people? Like, so like, don't think you're safe at a police station. So that kind of commentary, and so that sort of leap of like, well, now we're just taking public assassination and making it profitable. Um, the we can date ourselves a little bit here. We're recording here shortly after the CEO of a major US based healthcare company was murdered straight up in like Midtown New York, just like shot down in the middle of the street. So like, if that can just happen, this guy can then do that and then walk away and still be, I mean, you're telling me that if that person also could do that for $1 million, that guy did it for nothing, So you're telling me that like, if it's somehow blessed by some entity that you could do this for money now. Yeah.
I mean, what's the horror movie where like all the rules are suspended for one night?
The Purge.
Yeah. So this is like
it's that, but you can get paid for it.
To the Purge.
Yeah. It's that, but like, there's one night of the year where there are no laws, everything is legal, and everything you do, you can get paid for doing it.
Right. This is actually a more this is a more thoughtful version of the Purge. Like the Purge would be a more intriguing concept.
The Purge
was like, and there's going to be a bidding war for 2 weeks leading up to the Purge.
Yes. As to who can do what. Yeah. The Purge is just straight anarchy, straight no rules, nothing. Crowded here is showing you what that world would be like if you just threw some money on top of it. If you made anarchy capitalism, basically.
Yeah. There's a term for the anarcho-capitalist. I don't know. There's some way to combine those words.
Whatever that is, that's closer to what Crowded is here, because the world they've set up is that anything you can do, anything you want done or can do, you can make money off of, because there's an app for that, including killing someone, and in this case, for someone like Vita, protecting someone. Which is the natural offshoot of if someone is going to pay money to have someone killed, then presumably that person wants to stay alive, so they'll pay someone to help keep them alive. It's the natural reaction. So there is this sense of like, is this like in our current day society with what we have in technology, is this the inevitable end of not end, but the like
the
direction
logical
end of capitalism, where everything is monetized? Is this where we're going? Is there no other way we can go?
Yes, although always the criticism of thought experiments like this is that nothing moves on a straight trajectory. But yes, if this with no guardrails, assuming history constantly marches forward in one steady direction with no zigs and zags and curves and bends, yes, this is where it would be.
Yeah,
100%. Which like the point of the thought experiment is not to say this is the likely outcome, but it is saying consider the morality of the present. And I think it was, I mean, I'm sure he would have said it if not before that. I'm debating whether it was Aristotle or Plato. One of them, I think Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics, said, basically the good starting point for ethical behavior is if everyone behaved the way that I behave, would we live in a just society? And I just apply that to driving on highways. I'm like, I'm like, if everyone behaved the way you behave, we would all be in fender benders. If everyone behaved the way I behaved, everyone would get where they're going on time. We could all bend the speed limit a little bit. But there would be no one slamming on brakes. No one would be cutting off semis, causing them to shift like 14 times. Yeah, so it's just like in the smallest possible example, and the thought experiment works, but also you see how frail these systems of morality are
Yeah.
when that and Alex and I just went to a Comic-Con yesterday, and I try not to be too uptight at these things, but like I'm carrying around a bag of books to get signed, and sometimes carrying like a print poster, things like that. And people who walk into like the middle of an intersection and just stop to look
Just
around
stop. Yeah.
drive me up the wall, even though they're getting a better experience than I am. I'm on a dogged mission, like ready to get in, ready to get out, do what I came to do. They're enjoying every second of it. And I'm like, come on, you walk like you drive, and this is terrible.
But there also is the idea of like, I don't care what you're looking at or
Step
thinking of.
aside and find a place to
If you
observe.
stop in the middle of where everyone's walking, what do you think is going to happen? And part of it is a lot of people don't even, that doesn't register with them. They don't,
Right.
that doesn't think about how my movement is affecting anyone else around there. And I'm not putting myself above these people or whatnot, but anyone who's ever met me would say like, that's a really large human being. Like I'm 6'5", like I'm a huge dude. So, and I've always been tall. So I've always thought about my relationship versus everyone else around me, because at any given time I can mow down anybody I want to. If I wanted to get through a crowd, I can get through a crowd. But like that also involves me knocking over like children and small, like I can do that, but I choose not to. So I'm always aware of
Well, and with your height, you have the foresight to see around the crowd.
that too. But I get frustrated with people like it's not that they're being intentionally self-centered, but it's the idea that I don't know what it is. They don't recognize how their presence affects the presence of everyone around them. Like how your being and your actions radiate out into everyone else, into random people you don't know, whether it is someone like Charlie here, doing all these gigs and living the life she does, or it's some random person in a convention who just stops in the middle of a walkway to look at something, which is cool. You see something there, but the 85 people behind you who are walking in the same direction, who just slammed into each other because you just stopped and no one wanted to knock you over, like you got to have a little bit of situational awareness, and I think someone like Charlie,
but neither of us are ready to open a Reaper campaign against these people, right?
Exactly, because it's not malicious, and I can understand. While it's annoying to me, it's wildly annoying. I don't think it's malicious, and I think someone like Charlie too. Some of her actions may be a little more borderline, but I don't think she's intentionally trying to get anyone angry at her. I think she's just trying to live the life she wants to live by her own rules and standards, right? And so it's almost like everyone else be damned, that she is so her whole mindset is, what can I do right now that's going to get me to the thing I want to do next? And
well, everyone be
there's no more
damned
thought for that.
Is the underlying current of the gig economy, because any gig you take is one I don't get.
That's good. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that's it's the insidious thing about it is like it pits every single person against each other. And and I heard Jeff Bezos give an interview about like their delivery
super
employees.
Dangerous words to start a sentence with, but yeah,
right. No, he was talking about like why it's a good thing that they see all of their like delivery drivers and grocery delivery drivers as independent contractors. He's like, oh, it's best for everyone. He's like, that way, they're not locked into any commitment with us. If they ever get a better job, no hard feelings. You just get up and move on. And same goes for us. I'm like, yes, the billion-dollar corporation is on the same footing as the person driving around in their like gently used 2003 Corolla delivering groceries. I'm like, yeah, you're on the same footing. It's totally fair.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I really believe he believes that. Like,
Yeah,
I think
probably.
he's
Yeah,
naive
yeah,
enough to think like,
yeah.
well, I'm a hustler and a hard worker and I put it all together like this. And if I had the option to pick up easy money in my free time by doing deliveries, I would have done that until I didn't need it. It's like, right. But you had other options. And yeah, you could have picked up extra money in your free time, but a lot of people like it's moving into being their primary income,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. But no, I absolutely believe he believes that. He's deluded himself into thinking that,
Right.
or
Either
or
he's
or,
convinced himself of that,
or
or
he
he's just really not thought it through.
or he just can't. He literally can't fathom another side to it. So it isn't that he has to believe in it, it's just that the opposite just isn't a reality that could possibly be true to him. You know.
Yes.
So it's the only way to think because there is no other option. So, but yeah, so again, but none of these things about Charlie that we've seen, th- that last step of like ordering a hit on someone, I think is meant to, again, the way that the, you have to assume in the majority of people who would read this comic and who exist in this world, that's the bridge too far. Not for everyone, we see that, but for most people, um, the idea of ordering a hit on someone, let alone doing it in the way that this book describes, the specifics around Reaper of a crowdfunding campaign and all that stuff. Forget about that. Just the idea of like legally sanctioning a hit on someone is a pretty far leap to get to. So I think we're meant to everything we see about Charlie. I think, again, we come back to the idea of like, she's not that great a person to be around, but like, how do you go from that to like all out warfare against her? I think that's what we're supposed to be setting up. And this idea of, and also there's a part of me that I think they keep showing Charlie and her actions to where you're supposed to be looking at Vita and being like, just like walk away,
I know.
like, is it worth it? Yes.
I don't get the impression that Vita needs the gig economy money. Like
Well,
I'm not saying she's financially independent, but I think there's like a code of honor to what she sees herself doing in a sense of purpose.
I think so, which is why I think they went to the rigmarole of being like, wow, you live in this big house here. Why is that? Oh, basically it was gifted to her, So the idea is that, yes, there's no payments on that. She's got an old ass car,
Right.
So I think
It's a classic. I think it's what you meant to say.
sure. But I do think on some level it's meant to show it was meant to show that she does this and continues to do it because yes, there's a level of, you're right, there's a code of honor there, but it isn't like she's picking up other gig jobs, you mentioned she's the lowest rated person on Defender. What is it, like 1.4
Well, yeah. Well,
stars,
that
whatever it
and
is?
she was like, "You work 9 jobs." She's like, "Yeah, on a normal day."
Yeah.
And Vito's like, "I work one job sometimes."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was
So,
like
so,
maybe
so, what
one.
is she doing when she's not doing this? Well, she doesn't have a lot of these other payments to have and all that. So, I do think you're right. They've set her up to show that once you contract with her, like that's like a sacred bond in her mind.
Right.
But as the
And they
readers,
pay upon completion, right? So I mean, there is like a little more incentive with defend to
yes,
like
I think so.
keep
Yes,
them alive because you don't collect any money if they die.
I believe so. Yes, and of course in this case, I believe if I'm not mistaken, so if a Reaper campaign is put out against you and you survive it, you get the money from the Reaper campaign.
Oh, I
I think
didn't
so.
realize that. But that,
I think so.
I mean,
But
that's definitely a game changer.
I think that's what it is. And then if you're someone on defend and you're defending this person and they survive,
They're
then
good for it. Yeah.
part of your pay. Yeah, I do think you're right on that. So because you're right, Vita keeps talking about adding this to her tab. So it isn't
Right.
like isn't like Charlie is paying her for this. She's just, Vita's, what you would have to assume is keeping very copious and meticulous notes on everything, on all expenses, on everything she's done. Obviously, every person that she kills as part of her job, there is paperwork they have to do. Which again, there's a commentary on bureaucracy and paperwork that they taught. This idea that you have to fill it out by hand.
Well, and that for Vita, It's like, yeah, I would take more human life, but the paperwork,
Yeah,
not
it's
the
such a crap.
morality, the
Yeah,
paperwork.
yeah.
So
Sorry,
bureaucracy saves lives. That's the message of the book.
uh, when they end up at the library's basically become like a shelter,
Oh my
and and
gosh.
and
Yeah,
and
the
and and,
library is so bleak.
and, they,
That might
and
be the saddest part
it probably is. And when
for
Charlie
me.
was like, "Oh wait, when you say we're coming to do paperwork, I didn't think you were actually meaning that." But they get there and they get whatever they're hold up, and Vita has this giant stack of paper, and she's got to fill out all the stuff here. And Charlie was like, "Oh wait, we're literally doing paperwork." And Vita's like, "Yeah, that's what I said we're going to do." You know, that's why we came here. So, but yeah, there is I obviously, as the book ends, this volume ends, we see evolution in the relationship between Vita and Charlie. You know, there is this kind of like potentially like not quite enemies to lovers, but like antagonists to being on the same side, you know, and there is this move towards that. But I do think, again, as I go back to, you're supposed to look at Vita on some level and just be like, God, just walk away. Right.
Yeah.
I think as a reader, there's meant to be a little bit of frustration with both the characters. I think that's what they want. You know, when you're reading this, you're not supposed to be sitting perfectly comfortable with both Charlie and Vita. You're supposed to look at Charlie and just be like, "Oh God, just shut up for a second, right? Just stop talking, sit still, and listen." You know. And at Vita, I think you're supposed to read and be like, "Oh, not worth it." You know, you're
Right.
already at 1.4 stars. Like, what are you doing here? Just like let this one go. Like, it is not worth it to keep going. So I think you're supposed to be, as a reader, be on edge a little bit and be a little frustrated, because that's what hooks you in. I think with these characters is the idea that it's like they're so close to being not as terrible, you know, they can just a little bit, they can be a little bit better. And that's kind of what draws you and keeps, at least for me on the character front, keeps me interested in these two as they interact with kind of all these other wacky characters, you know,
Yeah, wacky. Yeah,
which we haven't
is
really touched
the
on yet.
understatement. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I want to talk about my one nitpick with this volume.
Okay, sure.
I suspect you have the same problem, but I'm gonna be really interested if you don't. I don't care about following the POV of the assassins at
Yes.
all.
Yeah.
It's just wasted pages to me. Like they're exactly who you'd think they would be. Like one of them is like they're tropes, and
Yes.
like
Yeah.
one of them is like the influencer guy who's like really insecure,
Yeah.
and you're trying to find an identity here, and then the other one is like the no frills, no fluff,
The actual
cold-blooded-
assassin.
the
Yeah.
actual assassin.
Yeah.
We've been following her for a while with no payoff at all yet after six
Yeah.
issues, which I'm fine with a slow burn. This guy, it's like his story or his contribution to the story ended exactly how you knew it was going to end, which means all of the time we spend like about his relationship with his like partner, production assistant,
Manager.
whatever.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's seeding something that comes back later, and then it would pay off and it would matter. But I suspect, based on just volume one, that you're probably done with that guy, and we're moving on to the next, the more serious assassin.
I agree. So, he was. I don't have his name written down on me. What was his name again? Do you have it?
No, it
It's
was
some
just,
terrible-
but that was exactly the point. Was
Yeah,
like I just glossed over his name because I was like, doesn't matter.
he's
Won't come
that
up.
guy. Yeah, he's that guy. And I was wondering. So the other our professional assassin. What is it? Circe? What is
Yeah.
her? Is that where we're going? It's Circe, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So I don't mind that slow burn because she's actually doing something, and we see she's super competent. The thing that I get a little the one thing that's off on that character for me is that we get her basically solo narration, or like her reports into some higher body there.
Right.
You know,
Presumably now the government, right?
well, yeah, I would almost want those if she's going to be like the super capable silent assassin, like literal silent assassin. I would almost want those pages to just be art only, where we see her. Oh, she's got into Vita's house. she's looking through her stuff, and we recognize because we've seen the art already. Oh, she went into Charlie's place because we saw a flashback. We see, oh, she's tailing him. I would almost want her stuff to be silent. I
Right.
think that would have been a cooler way to go with that. As for our other influencer guy, I I was thinking about how that character could have been deployed maybe slightly differently to be a little more effective. And I'm kind of bumping on what I think that would be.
Well, I think
If
that's the trick is
if there was a way to do that where you only, I don't know if you, because the whole point is you see him on screen and he's the big arrogant bombastic guy, right? And then off screen, yeah, you're right, totally insecure and get the trope of a character you expect him, that archetype of a character. But yeah, I don't know if it really works there. I don't know if it really works, and I wonder if it would have been better if you just eliminate that dude's backstory, like his off camera persona, and instead you just had like 5 influencers and you only saw them on screens.
That's
And
exactly,
like,
yeah. I was like,
and
the
you
POV
bombard them.
switch is what
Yes.
bothered me.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you just showed that here's one dude and he's kind of a jerk because yeah, he's a social media
Right.
assassin
And if it
influencer.
was
And
Vito
then there's-
watching that on a TV at a bar,
and
totally
then
fine.
and then you flip the channel and there's another one. Here's some other woman here doing this. And you've got all these influencers leading these armies of people coming at you. And then you have the silent assassin who only we're following, who has no dialogue. I think that would have been more effective in terms of if we're going to spend time with these characters, because otherwise, ultimately, it doesn't really matter, in my feeling, in this volume. It doesn't really matter who is after Charlie,
Right. No, it
Except-
doesn't. It's
except
about
for-
like, why is she constantly going out of her way
Yeah.
to like
Not be safe.
not be safe, create problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
frustrate the only person who's trying to keep her alive?
Exactly. So yeah, I think it's very clear to say that the Cersei character is going to be important. So because of that, you leave her as is. I just think it would have been a cooler visual storytelling trope if we never got any of her reports in. What does she get? She gets the gray text box. Is that what if I remember that correctly?
Yeah.
What did we talk about?
I can
we'll
flip
touch on
to it. This one I have digitally, or this is the one I have in print, so I can flip a little more easily. But I mean, she does not get a lot of page time.
She doesn't, but there is.
It ends on her, right?
It does, but once she's in town, her narration boxes are basically like mental notes to herself, like she's scoping out a scene.
It's like a James Bond thing, right?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
a Batman. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
investigating the crime scene.
Exactly. I'm taking notes as if I'm filing a report there, but her stuff is gray. And one thing I do want to mention here, we mentioned it a little bit last week in the Zero, but Cardinal Ray's lettering here, it's such a basic and easy thing to do when a character is off panel. Their narration boxes, the words associated with them are colored differently. And again, it's one of those things that it's super, super common, especially in kind of Marvel and DC superhero comics. You got a bunch of characters showing up there that everyone's text box is going to be a little different color. And usually when they first appear, like Batman's in black, right? First time he appears,
Right.
next to his box, little bat symbol, right? And then maybe he's talking to Nightwing. And so Dick's narration box will be that blue, kind of lightish sky blue. And the first time you see it, you get the Nightwing symbol. So oh, that's Nightwing. And then the rest of the way through, when you see that color associated with that character, Superman's usually red, I think. Wonder Woman oftentimes is yellow for like the lasso and things like that. Whenever you see it, you associate, oh, I know who that person's speaking, even though I don't see them on screen. Cardinal Ray does the exact same thing here, except at no point do they tell you what the colors is, who associated with what. But as we said at the beginning, it's so obvious they don't have to tell you. As soon as you start the book and you go right into it and you see, oh, Charlie, she's retelling her tale and it's in pink. And then there's an interjection of a yellow text box. And you just know, all right, that's Vita because she wears a yellow jacket and Charlie has pink hair,
Yeah, which like That is the hilarious cartoon of it all. Is like
Yeah,
everyone wearing the same outfit all the time. Is very
absolutely.
like
But
Homer Simpson has worn the same outfit for 30 years,
yes,
40
yes.
years.
I
Uh,
don't know what it is, but again, it makes total sense. And so when a character shows up like Cersei and she gets the kind of the gray box, the first time we see her, she's in the gray dress with the gray boots, you know? Um, you know, whether it's blue for our other assassin, purple, I think is for someone else, maybe the FBI. But the idea that you just establish these without having to tell people who they are because of the flow of the comic, because of what the art and the color looks like and how the pages are laid out, you just know instantly, you know? And again,
yeah,
it's something that when you say it, it's so obvious, but as you're reading it, you don't pick up on it. You just know, you inherently know how to read the book and how to understand it. You understand who's talking and why. And it's so intuitive. And something like that is just like, that's the way comics should work, you know? And it doesn't matter
100%.
how
Yeah,
easy, doesn't matter how easy, how obvious, like how simple the layup is when it's executed well, it's just right. You just know. You don't have to be told this is what we're doing with the text and the dialogue. No, you just put it on the page. And if you're reading it, I said 3 pages in, you just understand what the convention is going to be. And so from there on out, as you're going through and you get more characters, more people giving narration, different colors for the text boxes, boom, doesn't matter. You can follow it. Your brain makes those connections, and there's nothing more to go with it. They now have you, and so as you move through the book, you're already set up. You're already primed for it, and something like that makes the reading experience so easy, and it allows them to, for better for worse in this case, allows them to juggle multiple characters, different perspectives. Now, whether or not we think we need the perspectives of the influencer and the other assassin, that's a different story as to how story necessary they are. But the fact that they can introduce those characters and give those perspectives and not have it feel confusing to the reader, you always understand who's talking and why and what they're talking about. It's very clear because there's never confusion as to who is talking. Um, all that stuff makes it so much easier to read. And again,
yeah.
though, but again, I'm with you. Do we need all those perspectives from a story standpoint? I don't know about that. But since they
Right.
are
Well, that's not
here,
up to the letterer. Yeah. The letterer
yeah,
just has to work with what they're dealt. And
exactly, yeah,
I
yeah.
think Cardinal
But
did a fantastic job
I
here.
agree. Said, but from a storytelling standpoint, did we need all of those other characters? I don't know. Could we have gotten them in a slightly different way and get maybe a similar outcome? Yeah, maybe so, maybe so. But I'm with you. By the time you finish volume one, I think you look back and think, at least for me, it was like, okay, the Cersei character, that's going to be important. I guess I can see why they put that stuff in there. The other guy, like, you know, because I think when it comes to secondary, tertiary characters, Vita's ex got the right amount of screen time, pace
Yes.
time.
Oh, yeah. No, I think
Where
that character was very well handled,
yes, yeah,
and you expect more from them.
yes, you
Whereas,
got you,
like, this guy, I'm already sick of him, and I know
yes,
I'm not going to see him again.
yeah, and it's almost like he's only there to serve as just like plot hindrance, which is fine. But then why do we get his backstory? Why do we get his motivation? Why do we spend time
Yeah.
on that? If he's just going to be there to mobilize an army against Charlie, if he's just going to be there to further his own brand and try to win this money because he's desperate for it, because he wants that. I there, it does feel like a couple pages with his stuff there probably could have skipped over, probably could have done without. But I think that's a minor nitpick. I think it's a valid nitpick, but I'm with you. It is something
It
that
doesn't
kind of
take
jumped
away
out at
from
me.
the book, but it was just like, why did we have to do this? Why do we have to sit through this?
Yeah. That's a good
Um,
way to put it.
so, yeah, that was my main nitpick. By the way, I wanted to call it at least one more really great Easter egg, which is in issue 3. They're at a nightclub or somewhere, and on the TV, or no, they're back at Vita's house, the safe house, and they're watching TV. And the list of TV shows that appears on the screen. You have American Idolater,
Uh-huh.
Who Wants to Eat a Millionaire, and Chief Justice Fiore.
Why is the last one the most scary?
I don't know. And like, Who Wants to Eat a Millionaire should be the scariest, but they end with Chief Justice Fiore,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think that's like just like the perfect throw out because he's not a scary or menacing dude in real life. If it was like Chief Justice Bezos, that'd be a little on the nose. But like
yeah,
this is
yeah.
like the idiocracy of like no
Yes, yeah,
entertainment culture
yeah.
has ruined the culture, not necessarily greedy billionaires, although there's certain plenty of that in play here. It's actually we've just become dumbed down, Brave New World style by
Hmm.
entertainment.
Sure, sure,
Um,
sure.
and so Chief Justice Fiore, and I think that's one where like you could show that to Guy Fieri and be like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
Whereas
not
like
gonna.
Bezos will sue you.
You see, exactly. You're not going to offend anybody with that. But those little things, I think, is what we talked about when we were discussing the Flintstones, Mark Russell and Steve Pugh, the background jokes, like when you get the big spread of Bedrock, and you see all the shops, and
Yeah.
every single one
FX
of them,
Snake House.
yeah,
Yeah.
every single one of them is a pun, a joke, and the idea that you can just throw that stuff in there because you guys think it's funny, whether it's in the script or not, you can put it in there. And again, once you have Reaper, as we said, once you accept that idea, then nothing is too far.
Right.
So yeah, anything goes. It can be as ridiculous, as absurd, as hilarious, as funny, as sad as you want it to be. It all plays.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's about the end of my notes, but I did have one quote that I absolutely adored, which Alex typically types the episode descriptions, and he typically has free reign to pick. Okay, after the car accident, after the car accident at the Yellow Bubble, Vita says, "You alive?" And Charlie says, "Being alive is the one that hurts, right?" I, great, great, like zinger in the moment, and also like kind of a summative statement for the whole volume.
Yeah,
Like
but
being alive is the one that hurts.
there's also like you want to drill down real deep on that.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Like there's like deep existential in that. The idea of yes that life is pain, but no, life is feeling. Right. So the fact that you can feel, the fact that you can hurt, does mean you're alive. And what does that mean for the larger sense of living and what life is like? What's the meaning of it if you go through it and you don't feel anything? Or it just could be a glib comeback.
Right.
It works on all those levels there.
Yeah. I think there were like a few really good quotable moments. I mean, it's a very well written book.
It is. It's. We keep going back to the buddy comedy setup, and I think it's appropriate here because you get those zingers, and it works because they don't all come from Charlie. They don't all come from the Chaos Agent. When the straight man in the duo, when Vita can throw something out there, make a comment, make an observation, maybe something under her breath or whatever it is that this book can still be this book can be very, very funny. This is action comedy, right? Action thriller.
It's what we were in our interview
it's not
with
thriller.
Kyle Starks. We were saying like
We didn't say thriller,
this is-
right? Yes,
no,
this is
no, no.
action
It's
comedy.
action comedy.
Action comedy. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is what we were saying like has been totally missing from movie theaters for like 15, 20 years now.
Oh yeah.
And it's even hard to market comics like this because Kyle Starks does this, but he also does other things. But
Yes.
once you're the funny guy, it's always like a rolling in
funny
the
guy.
aisles funny.
Yeah.
And you get nominated for a comedy when you were not trying to write a comedy.
Yeah.
Those type of things. So I think it's dangerous to be the funny guy in comics.
Because you get pigeonholed in that more than anything else.
Especially when it's like this is not as much of a like this is more of a true comedy. There are satirical elements in it, but I would not call the whole thing a satire. Whereas like Mark
true.
Russell is all a satire.
Yeah. And I
Sarah
do think-
Gailey is often as like a horror satire.
horror satire, yeah, but but their stuff is funny, but I would not call it comedy in the way that we
This is
would
a
classify
comedy,
someone
right.
like Kyle
This has
Stark. Yeah,
setups and
this had
punchlines and
and what
jokes.
I will say though, if you read other works by Chris Sabella, like they're not all comedy. They're not like all. I mean, like Shanghai Red is not a funny book. Cold War is not a funny book, not in the way that this is. So there is some diversity there in terms of style. But I was going to say, you're right. This is the kind of story, comic or not, that was a staple of storytelling and movies and TVs and stuff when you and I were growing up and all that. We talked about Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
It was like you couldn't even deliver a genre without
Yeah,
adding
and
some
so
comedic spin on it,
what I
which was
will
also kind of, early Marvel magic. Was like
there is
they all had the glimmer in their eye, and
yeah
they were a little tongue in cheek about things.
yeah
They
yeah.
weren't so self-serious.
So it was interesting. So I got a text from my brother, and he said, I that he hadn't heard of Crowded before, but it was like I'm listening to the premise, and it sounds a lot like the plot to the movie Jackpot. Um,
I've never even heard of that movie.
which I had heard of, is a movie that's on Prime, that came out earlier this year. It stars Aquafina and John Cena and Simu Liu. Basically, what it comes down to, this is what it is. You win the lottery, called the Grand Lottery, right? The only catch is if someone kills you before sundown, they get to claim your prize.
Wow.
So Aquafina wins this lottery, and she joins up with this John Cena character who's kind of like an amateur protector, because there's a small business of people whose job it is to protect the Grand Lottery winners. And I guess it's Simu Liu who's after her to try to kill her and claim the prize. And so I knew about the movie because I know it's like, oh, okay, it's Aquafina, John Cena, and Simu Liu and all this, but I I didn't know what it was about until my brother Tony mentioned it. So I read the plot description. And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty much what Sabella and crew did with Crowded. And it made me wonder, like, this format's still viable, right? The storytelling format is still viable. This idea of the odd couple thrown together under tense circumstances and then just go.
You get the chemistry right, and it'll always work.
Exactly.
But movie theaters know there's no built-in automatic money with it. It's always a gamble.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Unless you get the right kind of stars there,
Yeah,
But
if you
even
get Kevin Hart and The Rock in it, then,
people will show up for that. Yeah. So, but when my brother mentioned Jackpot, that movie, it's like, okay, so on some level, they're still making these types of stories. I was then thinking about, well, yeah, Crowded is just a buddy cop story, and you could tell this story, and I don't want to say ignore what happens in the comic, but just the setup of, like, we got 30 days to keep this one person alive because this crowdfunding campaign is up over $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is. So the stakes keep getting raised. You wouldn't even have to follow the beats of the comic. Just if you get the two right people together, like,
right.
Why hasn't Netflix made this thing?
It doesn't. Well, I mean, they've stopped making things altogether, but that's a separate issue. Yeah.
Fine. But the idea of the buddy comedy, you get two people, you get the right people together who people just want to watch on screen. Again, you get the straight man and the chaos agent. You put those two together and just go do stuff. You throw in jokes, you throw in action. There was an entire, like, segment of the film and television industry built on that concept that we've lost that. It's that kind of mid-tier, mid-level movie. But I think this book shows that storytelling setup, that construct, it works. It's tried and true. And, you put a little spin on what the circumstances are. In this case, the idea of both Reaper and Defend, right? That's the twist for this setup. But it's an odd couple pairing, action comedy odd couple, and that is tried and true. And that's the kind of story setup, the story type that is just at this point, it's archetypal, and it always works. And it made me think, like, how could someone not see this and just take this idea and make it into that type of adaptation. And then I realized, well, I guess someone did. They made this thing called Jackpot, which I haven't seen. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. I don't know. But it's that same kind of idea, you know. But I think this one could be, you know, it could be that kind of level of fun and engagement for
Oh,
one of the many streamers.
Jackpot's a new movie.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah,
thinking.
yeah. Just
I was
coming out
like,
this year. Yeah.
okay, it sound well, but this is very telling. You described it, and I assumed that was a '90s movie that I just happened to miss. But no, it was earlier this
I
year.
said Aquafina and John Cena. Those people have not even famous for the past like
Yeah,
five,
yeah.
6 years. So,
Um,
but yeah, yeah. So yeah,
but 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ouch.
yeah. I said I'm not
Not that
counting the
you
quality.
care, but
I haven't seen it. I'm not going to count the quality, but just the idea that that was just made earlier this year. It came out earlier this year, just to show that that idea of again the odd couple pairing, specifically in an action comedy format, that is tried and true, and that's a book like that's what crowded it. That's kind of the lineage that it's in, which is why I think it's compelling and it's fun, because those types of stories just they resonate with people, you know.
yeah, and I think it's very safe to say if you enjoy this book, you would also enjoy Assassination by
Yeah,
Kyle Starks and Erica
yeah.
Henderson. Yeah, I think even art style. I
There
think
there is
Erica Henderson's art is very similar, not in a negative or derogatory way, but like in the comp way. Like if you like this, you'll like that.
I agree. I think there is something similar in, I would say specifically character design, because I think one thing that Stein and Brandt do really, really well, wildly expressive faces. You know, what they do with the eyes and the mouth, and they are excellent with that, because for the most part, a lot of it's exaggerated, it's over the top, but it's kind of meant to be. It's like taking reality to just one notch beyond, but it works. It works for this story, which is kind of again this heightened sense of our actual world, you know. And
Yeah.
so I love how expressive their faces are, how they do their faces with their characters. And I agree that that is where things are similar to someone like Erica Henderson, specifically in Assassination. So yeah, you get a quasi similar thematic bridge, the idea of people killing for money, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, they're in terms of art style, the thing that I really love about Stein and Brandt's work is again, I love their character design and I love how expressive the faces are. It is in
But
some
I
ways
also
it's
love, I mean, I love they do cinematic shots with like foreground background work that's
yeah,
really like the pencil work in the background is not just blurry, it's still clean,
yeah.
but they do it with colors. Like they'll your foreground characters will be bright and vivid and your colors will kind of like fade into the back. I don't know. It's just it's all
I would
very
say
pretty.
there's one scene early when they first get to Vita's house and it's the full page splash and it's like the cutaway of the inside and you see them on the various levels,
That's so cool. Yeah.
which is just like that page kind of comes out of nowhere. Because again, outside of that, there's not a lot of crazy paneling. It's pretty standard, but every once in a while you get a nice page like that, and you know that's on a left-hand page. So you turn that and you see that beautiful full page splash there, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, like we can do some cool stuff here. You know, we can do some interesting stuff, storytelling wise and presentation wise. And again, I love when we see that from artists, just letting them flex with the storytelling, you know, pull us out of kind of the standard panel to panel stuff and do something cool like that. And that was probably one of my favorite shots of this whole first volume, just getting something innovative like that where you see the cutaway of the house.
Yeah. I'm totally with you. It almost reminded me of like the side scrolling Nightwing issue.
Yeah,
Where
something like that.
like or even just like any NES game where you're side scrolling
Yep.
adventure, getting the house opened up like that, like a dollhouse. Just very, very cool perspective. And it was just like next level, like it didn't need to be that to advance the story, but it was just a really beautiful hook, which ties back into the cover that I love so much for that issue, which I'm pretty sure that's all in issue 2.
Is that two?
Yeah, where it's like, Charlie with a sinister look, Vita defending the house and the cardboard cutouts like in a haunted house style thing.
Oh yeah,
version.
yeah,
It
yeah.
might be the variant, but
No, no, that is the
um,
main one. That is the main one. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, that's the one. I'm like, I'm almost always like, if I get a book signed, I want issue one, not here.
Yeah.
Like if I get an issue signed by Rose Stein and Ted Brandt, it's going to be issue two because that's just like one of my favorite covers. I could imagine, especially the way it dropped, and I mentioned this in the zero, the way it dropped in the story here. Like
Mhm.
chapter one ends with them all loading out of their cars. You flip the page and you get that cover, like a virgin version of that cover. And it was like, yep, that's exactly the scene that I was setting up. And that's a great, like, previously on Crowded.
Yeah.
I love when I was talking to an artist about this yesterday. It was Corey Smith, who did covers for Moon Knight. He said that he actually was working with Jed McKay on the covers because Jed wants not just cool covers of cool poses of Nightwing or of Moon Knight, but he wants it to
Story relevant.
story relevant,
Yeah.
right? He's
Yeah.
like telling him, here's the contents, here's what should be in the like
Yeah.
still, I want a Corey Smith drawing, I want a Corey Smith cover, but here's what it should include. And I was like, oh, do you like that? Or is it kind of, he's like, oh, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
He's like, because when they just tell you like, just give us, give us Batman and we'll use it for some comic in the future. It's like, any
Well, yeah.
context or anything. It's like,
Look, Batman
there's
standing on a gargoyle looking out over Gotham. That's you do that, or Batman jumping off a gargoyle.
exactly, yeah.
That one, yeah. Or
But if
or
you're jumping
Batman,
off, it's really going to be Daredevil or Nightwing. But yeah,
the Batman swinging from a gargoyle across.
that's true. Yeah.
There are hundreds of ways, but no.
But
I think
like, if you don't even know, if it's going to be like main Batman or detective or whatever, you don't even know what suit to put him in. It's like it doesn't matter, just do it Batman. So I'm
It's
like,
Batman, yeah.
I get how like being part of the story, being part of the creative team really helps the covers.
For big two, yeah, that I think that's got to be that's creator dependent because oftentimes they want to have covers out there to solicit, who may not, the story can change and all that. So you want a cover that maybe is evergreen. Obviously, when you're doing a creator owned book, like, and the creative team is doing the covers, they know what's in it. They know what
Absolutely,
keys,
yeah.
they know what is going in. That it's not a surprise to them. So real quick, I wanted to, as we were talking here, I was trying to, we talked about the art and the character design, and you mentioned Erica Henderson. And I agree with that comp. I was thinking of something else and I couldn't think of it, and it came to me as you were talking there. And this is a completely different type of book. Well, although I guess they've done other things, but a lot of the art style, a lot of the character design reminds me of an artist named Max Sarin. They are best known for they were not the first artist on Giant Days, which is a book from Boom.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they picked up, I think just after the first trade, so like issue 7 went all the way to the end of that series. But the way that they draw characters, and Giant Days is just like a slice of life book about 3 girls in college over in England. Phenomenal, one of my all-time favorite books.
I was going to say you used the word just, but I was like,
Yeah.
it's a great book.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But the way that they draw faces and expressions that are over the top, and it's super super crazy. There's a lot of similarity to that in what Stein and Brandt do here. Another place you could find their work is Max Sarin's work. That is they did, I think, maybe just the first series of Harley Quinn Kiss Bang Kill Tour. Like there was a series of comics that were done interstitial to the Harley Quinn animated show that's on Max.
Okay.
And I believe they did the art for the first series they did for that. So there you get their wonderful art on characters like, Harley and Ivy and Barbara and all them. So, but you get that incredibly expressive way they draw faces, and Stein and Brandt together here. I get a lot of vibes from that, and there's a simpleness and a cleanliness to their faces, which allows them to be so expressive. Like when they get crazy with the eyes, or the way their mouths are shaped and all that. When they're happy, mad, or yelling, or whatever it is, it comes across super, super well on the page. Like I said, combine that with the way that Trina Farrell does the colors, and I think specifically around Charlie, because there's the pink hair. She's usually wearing like a pink top or something like that, and then oftentimes there's like the pink on her cheeks and all that. There's
Oh yeah, yeah.
there's a lot happening there, color coordinated wise, and it all kind of works seamlessly together for it to pop on the page, whether they're against a blank background, because we're just foreground focused, or if it's in a scene like the burning wreck of multiple cars or a house fire or something like that. That there are standout moments for these characters and their looks, and so I think that's a real strong point. And one of the things that I really liked about picking up this book, there was a connection to the art there, and I think for me, looking back on it, it was that connection that it reminded me of Giant Days. It reminded me of Max Sarin's work.
Yeah. No, that's another great comp. Although our goal at the end of this episode is to get people to read volume 2,
Yeah,
7 through
yeah.
12, not all of the other books we want to recommend.
That is
But
true. That is
yeah,
true.
so
So in the end, though, where do we leave our protagonist here? The whole time, right? The whole time there's been this push and pull of this campaign is focused in LA, right? So why don't I just leave LA? And part of Vita's kind of thing from a story standpoint, she's like, no, this is my city, this is my home. This is where I've decided home is. But it gets to the point now where they are, the last scene is they, now leaving Los Angeles. They're still in Vita's car is somehow still running. It's got like a Blues Brothers kind of immortality vehicle to it. It's been crashed and wrecked.
I was going to say, well, you already referenced planes, trains, and automobiles, but when it's
yeah,
like,
there we go. Absolutely. Yes.
he's like, sir, do you know how fast you're going? He's like, actually the speedometer melted. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but radio still works.
My favorite actually is you're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
How do they know where we're going?
He's drunk. How do they know where we're going? Yeah.
I don't know where we're going. But yeah, but so we've set up here, right? So we know that Cersei's on their tail. They're leaving Los Angeles, and Vita has this. It kind of comes to an honest, at this point, conclusion or thought about Charlie, and that like she doesn't trust her now. Like truly decides she cannot trust her. And so we've had this pairing here that have come together. They've been forced together, but now they're like really on the run now. And what is the interpersonal relationship going to be going into volume 2? I think it leaves it in a fun spot. It leaves it in an interesting spot again because you're focused on the relationship of our two mates. What do our odd couple? What's the next thing they have to face together? And again, that's the kind of story that I think you can set off as long as you think you need to. If you have the characters right, you can put those two into any kind of circumstance. And so for me, that's the propulsion into the next volume, is that I want to see where these two go together. I almost care less about, really, I care less about like Cersei's on their tail, there's an assassin there, things like that. I care less about the Reaper campaign at this point. For me as a reader, it's about, I want to see where these two characters go and how they figure things out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the direction it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that all of this interesting stuff with the apps and gig economy, that was the hook. You come for that, but you stay for the characters.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that stuff sprinkles through. It's always there. It's omnipresent. But yeah, that isn't the
right. But that's the setting. That's not the
yes.
plot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is
that's
the distinction
that
we
serves
make
you up there,
all
definitely.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, issue 7 through 12, the rest of the single issues, or volume 2, is next week. Can't wait to dig into it. This book is an absolute blast. It's like, I don't very often read, laugh out loud in a room by myself when I'm reading comics, but this did get a few chuckles from me.
Yeah, this is one that when the comedy hits, it is really, really funny. Because some of whether it's timing or the actual commentary, something that, again, we go back to that interview with Kyle Starks, comedy can be difficult, especially in comics, and I think this book finds the right tone. It is that perfect kind of action comedy blend of stuff that, again, maybe it sounds dated, but those are movies out of the 80s into the 90s that just were staples of
Yep.
I want to say staples on cable. You know, they'd come out in the box office, they'd do okay, and then they'd show up on cable and they'd run, 5 days a week, just constantly.
Oh yeah, they get a rebirth. Yeah,
they'd be on TNT or TBS, USA, whatever. You watch them over and over and over again, and there's that perfect balance of comedy and action. And I think Crowded is that kind of story, and so it's the kind of thing that resonates, the kind of show that resonates with me, definitely. I think with you as well.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we will see you next Thursday for Volume 2, and hope you enjoy it.
Peace.